At 0130 hours on August 21, 1942, Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki crouched in the steaming darkness at the edge of a coconut grove on Guadalcanal. The air hung thick with humidity, mosquitoes droned like distant artillery, and the rotting scent of jungle mingled with the salty breath of the nearby sea. Across the shallow, crocodile-infested tidal lagoon the Americans misnamed Alligator Creek, the enemy waited unseen. Ichiki could feel their presence, but it did not trouble him. They would not last long. He had studied these Americans for years. Every Japanese officer knew the truth. They were soft, pampered by wealth, softened by movies and music, lacking any true warrior code. Official assessments called them haughty, effeminate, and cowardly. They crumbled in rain, mist, darkness. Ichiki had told his officers before disembarking that the Marines were effeminate cowards. The battle would end swiftly. His veterans from China, hardened against overwhelming odds, had never tasted defeat. Why wait for the rest of the regiment? His 900 elite would sweep these weaklings into the ocean by dawn. He checked his family sword one last time. Tonight it would drink American blood. What unfolded over the next hours shattered Japanese beliefs about land warfare. By sunset, nearly 800 of Ichiki's men lay dead. His crack detachment ceased to exist. The myth of Japanese invincibility, forged in 8 months of conquest across Asia and the Pacific, crumbled on the blood-drenched sandbar of a forgotten creek. The story begins earlier, but the moment that made Japanese soldiers drop rifles and flee came when the first waves charged into the teeth of American BARs. The Marines waited in prepared positions along the West Bank. Lieutenant Colonel Edwin Pollock's 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines, had dug in deep. Fighting holes, cleared fields of fire, a single strand of barbed wire across the narrow sandbar, the only way across the creek mouth. Machine guns interlocked in deadly cones. 2 37mm anti-tank guns loaded with canister turned into giant shotguns, spraying 122 steel balls per round. Behind them, 75mm howitzers zeroed on the east bank. Among them crouched men like Private Al Schmid, assistant gunner on a 30 cal water-cooled Browning, with gunner Johnny Rivers and Corporal Leroy Diamond. Their BAR-armed rifle squads waited too. The Browning automatic rifle, a 20-pound beast firing .30-06 from 20-round magazines at 500 to 650 rounds per minute. In Marine squads, BARs provided the automatic firepower Japanese light machine guns could not match in numbers or sustainment. The Japanese had the Type 11 light machine gun, good but fed with awkward hoppers, prone to jams in mud and jungle filth. Their squads relied on riflemen with Arisaka bolt actions for most firepower. Marines countered with multiple BARs per squad, plus heavy M1917A1 machine guns pouring sustained fire. Ichiki ordered the assault. A green flare arced skyward at 0130. Machine guns and mortars opened from the east bank. Then the first wave, about 100 men from the 2nd Company, charged the sandbar. The Battle of the Tenaru by Martin Cherrett. They waded into shallow water, bayonets fixed, shouting Banzai, expecting to overrun soft positions. The Marines opened up. BARs hammered from multiple angles, rapid, accurate bursts chewing through charging lines. Heavy machine guns raked left to right. 37mm canister exploded in cones of death, ripping gaping holes. Men fell in heaps, bodies piling on the sandbar like driftwood. Survivors pushed forward, some reaching the wire, cutting through, engaging in hand-to-hand, but the fire never slackened. BAR gunners like those in Company H walked bullets across the bar, mowing down waves. Japanese officers tried to rally, but BAR fire cut them down mid-shout. The first assault collapsed. Bodies floated in the creek. Surviving Japanese withdrew, stunned. At 0230, a second wave, about 150 to 200 men, charged again. Same result. BARs and machine guns turned the sandbar into a killing field. canister tore limbs. Men screamed, dropped rifles, tried to crawl back. Some flung weapons aside in panic, fleeing into the surf or jungle, only to be cut down by flanking fire. Why drop rifles and run? The BAR was not just a rifle, it was squad automatic fire in the hands of every platoon. Japanese troops trained for bayonet charges in close combat faced unrelenting automatic fire they could not suppress. Their own light machine guns jammed or lacked volume. When leaders fell to BAR bursts, discipline broke. Panic spread. Men saw comrades shredded, realized no glory awaited, only death from invisible fire in the dark. By dawn, the sandbar reeked of blood and cordite. Hundreds lay dead. Ichiki refused retreat. Remaining troops tried flanking through surf or jungle, cut down again. Marines counterattacked. Tanks crossed the bar, crushing bodies. Aircraft strafed survivors. Ichiki died, some say in final charge, others by his own hand, but his regiment was annihilated. The BAR became legend that night. Japanese learned to fear its rapid, sustained fire in jungle close quarters. Banzai charges met walls of automatic fire. Soldiers dropped rifles, turned, ran, only to die anyway. This was no isolated horror. At Tenaru, as the Marines called it, the myth died. Japanese bravery met American fire and broke. The Pacific War shifted. Defenders with BARs could hold. Attackers with bolt actions could not cross open ground. Dawn broke over the Tenaru River, Alligator Creek, to the Marines on August 21, 1942, revealing a scene of utter devastation. The narrow sandbar, once a hopeful path to victory, now lay carpeted with Japanese dead. Bodies piled 3 and 4 deep in places, twisted in the sand, half submerged in the bloody shallows. The air reeked of cordite, gun oil, and the coppery stench of fresh slaughter. Coconut palms stood silent witnesses, their fronds dripping with morning dew and occasional crimson splatters. Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki refused to accept defeat. His remaining men, perhaps 300 to 400 survivors of the night's failed assaults, gathered in the jungle fringe, stunned but still driven by bushido and orders. Ichiki, ever the aggressor who had ignited war at Marco Polo Bridge, rallied them for one final push. He would lead it personally. At around 0700 hours, the remnants charged again. Some tried the sandbar once more, others waded through the surf or pushed through thick jungle undergrowth, bayonets fixed, voices raised in ragged Banzai cries. They expected the Americans to break, to flee as Japanese intelligence promised. They met the same wall of fire. Marine BAR gunners, now in daylight with clear fields, poured it on. The Browning automatic rifle, its 20-round magazine slamming home fresh loads, spat long, controlled bursts. A single BAR could suppress an entire Japanese squad. Multiples in interlocking positions created unbreakable kill zones. Gunners like Al Schmid, still at his post after a night of relentless firing, walked tracers across charging lines. When magazines ran dry, they slapped in new ones in seconds, the BAR's reliability in mud and humidity proving superior to Japanese weapons. Japanese troops, armed mostly with bolt-action Arisakas rifles, could fire perhaps 10 to 15 aimed shots per minute. The BAR delivered 500 to 650 rounds per minute in sustained fire. When a Banzai wave closed, the BARs shifted to rapid fire, mowing men down before they could close for bayonet work. Officers fell first. BAR bursts targeted leaders, shattering command. Without officers shouting orders, panic ignited. Men saw comrades shredded mid-stride, heard the vicious crack of 30-06 rounds tearing flesh, felt the hot whip of bullets. Discipline collapsed. Rifles clattered to the ground. Soldiers turned, dropped weapons to run faster, splashing back into the creek or bolting into the jungle. Some flung Arisakas aside in sheer terror, desperate to escape the unrelenting automatic hail. Marines watched in grim fascination as proud imperial soldiers, veterans of China, broke and fled like routed conscripts. The Marines did not let them escape easily. Flanking squads moved forward, BARs leading the way. M1919 machine guns chattered from elevated positions. 37mm guns, now reloaded, blasted canister into jungle thickets. By mid-morning, Marine counterattacks pushed across the sandbar. Light tanks rumbled over the bodies, crushing resistance pockets. Ichiki's end came in the jungle. Some accounts say he charged with sword raised, cut down by BAR fire. Others claim he committed seppuku amid the ruins of his command. Either way, by afternoon, organized Japanese resistance ended. Of the 916 who landed, only about 100 to 130 escaped eastward, many wounded, all broken. The battlefield told the story in silence. Rows of Japanese dead stretched along the beach under swaying palms. Hundreds felled in the open, rifles scattered where they dropped. Survivors later whispered of the devil's guns that fired without pause, turning honorable charges into massacres. This was the turning point. Japanese high command learned a brutal lesson. Banzai charges against prepared positions with automatic weapons were suicide. Across the Pacific, in New Guinea, Tarawa, Saipan, Iwo Jima, Japanese tactics shifted. They dug deeper bunkers, used more infiltration and ambush, avoided massed frontal assaults when possible. But the BAR's reputation preceded it. Japanese soldiers feared closing with Marines armed with these squad automatics. Dropping rifles to run became a grim survival instinct when facing that volume of fire. For the Marines, the BAR proved its worth. John Browning's design, reliable, hard-hitting, man-portable, gave infantry squads firepower once reserved for machine gun sections. It bridged the gap between rifle and heavy MG, turning defensive lines into death traps. The Battle of the Tenaru, or Alligator Creek, was small compared to later campaigns, but its impact echoed through the war. One arrogant colonel's contempt met American preparation and firepower. The myth of Japanese invincibility on land shattered there in the mud and blood under the roar of BARs that made elite soldiers drop their weapons and flee into the jungle. The Pacific War had just begun, and the BAR helped ensure it would not end in Japanese victory.